If you're watching the stream, we're going to start here probably in about 5 minutes. We're just waiting for a couple other people to roll in. Excellent. Glad you're here. Really glad you're here. Okay. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Brandon, and I'm coming up on a year in May.
Okay. Great. Excellent.
Charles, I've been real estate 5 years.
Okay. Okay.
Rachel, I've been real estate for 4 years.
What's that?
Sean Davidson stayed for 5 years.
Okay. Awesome. Excellent. Hello. What's that? I think so, yeah. Yep. I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah. Go ahead and get started.
I'm Andy Bond. This is Jeremy Fitzsimmons, and we're super excited to teach this class and teach it together. We have been working together, I guess, for 13 years now. And not when I say together, we weren't, like on the same team for a couple of years and then kind of went our separate ways, but we've been kind of bantering and doing transactions together for a long time, and we have a lot of fun. And our goal for this class is to increase your production and your expertise. It's not just to, spit out some facts and give you a little bit more knowledge. Our hope is that you can apply what we're going to share and increase your production and increase your value proposition legitimately to the clients that you're working with. And so a little bit about Jeremy. So Jeremy has been doing new construction sales for over a decade. He's got 750 personal transactions under his belt, all new construction. Now he runs a sales team. They do over 170 transactions a year, over 80 million in production. He's on the council of the National Association of Builders, and he's a coach for the National Association of Builders. So I'm excited to hear what Jeremy has to share. I glean every time Jeremy and I get together. I feel like I leave with a lot more tools to go into real estate and use. And so anyway, I'm super excited for you guys to hear what Jeremy has to say.
And I want to say that one thing that's like really awesome about working with Andy is Andy's got such a practical approach. When I got into new construction, I kind of specialized in it. And anytime you specialize in anything, you just get tunnel vision on like one thing. And Andy has been able to like really keep that balance of like relativity to like the general real estate market, so that it's not just one message that's all just new construction only, but how it like, because in the general market there's so much you're juggling, not just in like condos and townhomes, but you have a lot more than just new construction. So how do you thread that? How do you balance that? And Andy has been so, it's been an integral part of his business to be able to like be a professional in that, but not like tunnel vision like me, where I'm like extreme, gotta be one thing. He's worked with over 25 builders, and a lot of his business is new construction. So he has a lot of practical application, not just from a new construction only perspective, but how to integrate that in general real estate and how to be better at that. And Andy's always been a great friend and resources, and he's such a practical applicator of all this stuff, and I appreciate all the wisdom that he brings. But let's just dive in. I can't sit still, so this is going to have to go. The goal, like Andy said, is for us to really get into like understanding new construction from an opportunity perspective, but also like, how do you practically apply that? The things that we're going to be doing today is really talking, one, overview of better understanding the new construction market out there in a more broader sense. Sometimes our experiences that we have really is just how we've, you've maybe run by a deal, or you've done this one deal with this one builder, and you can kind of glean like that's how new construction is. But one thing I want to do is be able to kind of set our minds on like the three different spectrums of new construction, so that you can really, every time you run into a new construction opportunity, you can put them in one of those buckets. It's either red, white, or blue, or whatever you want to do that analogy. Now, so we're going to go over that. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons to each type builder, because as you're working with your buyers, you really want to maneuver them to the right product, the right builder, and the right opportunity. And that's something you really kind of want to be able to educate your buyers on, the pros and cons to the different lanes of new construction. Another thing I want to go over, I'm really excited to go over, is a proven exploration formula that can set your buyers up for success. There really is a world that most general real estate agents, if they went into the new construction like sales world in a deeper level, you'd be like, oh my gosh. This is a whole subculture of sales and real estate where they're just training a whole different way to maximize new construction sales. And it's like a different frequency in a way that we don't really see a lot in general real estate, but it's kind of fascinating to go like, okay, if you stood in, a National Home Builder Association like consultation or a seminar, and you listen to the way they talked, it's like almost a different frequency. They're speaking a little different language. It's still very relevant to everything y'all do, but the question really is I would love for y'all to tap into a little of those nuggets, because it could be very applicable to how you sell new construction from a general real estate perspective. So I want to kind of go over like a formula that's a very, very powerful formula. Like Keller Williams has their formula for selling. There's like a similar thing in the new construction world, but it's very applicable. It's not like completely different. We'll go over that. So we'll be talking about that formula today. And then we're just going to touch base on like how to maneuver through a new construction transaction, just kind of from top to bottom, real quick, just skirt along the surface, just so you kind of understand what's normal, what's a normal expectation to experience going through new construction process. And then really at the end, we want to kind of like button it up and kind of give you some helpful tips of how to leverage yourself as more of a new construction expert in the general real estate market, so that you can really talk to your buyers and say, this is not a weird dark corner to me. This is something that's you feel confident enough that you can start to almost like position yourself as an expert. But before we get into that, I would love to go around the room and kind of get a feel of any experience that anyone's had in new construction. Would like to kind of hear like maybe a couple transactions, did one, do it regularly, how much new construction has everyone experienced in their profession? If we can start over here. Hey, good. Okay. Great. Hey, good to see you.
I've probably done less things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Newbie. Get the pass. None? Oh, no. Hi. Yeah. Yes, you've done a lot for sure. 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 Yeah. Great. Yeah, awesome.
Similar, I've done most of the five, but just now 200 contracts from the ground up for the first time.
Great. Great. Yes. Great. Awesome. Okay.
I've not done many, but kind of walked with my mom through the whole process. She bought a new construction house, and so walked through with that.
Great.
Kind of saw the process.
So, man, we've got a lot of. How many have, and you can just raise the hands, we don't have to go around the room. How many have actually built their personal home or live in a new construction? I've gone through the process personally. Okay. So, it is a thing that's funny, like, I started doing this before I ever built my house, and when I built my house, it was like, oh, that's why they were upset. No, it really is something, a very personal experience when you go through building. But that great. Well, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like we have a lot going on. We all know the importance of this in the market. We're just going to kind of dump a really big, rock in the pond here and just splash this up with an obvious number that some of us know and maybe some of us haven't heard. Since COVID 2020, a third of real estate across the country has been new construction. A third, okay? A third, and it's still going strong. Some people are seeing that grow in different markets, obviously, but that's just an average. Chattanooga, it's 35%. So, the thing that I just want you to look in the mirror and ask yourself, if you are a real estate professional that sells real estate, is a third of your business targeting new construction? This isn't about listings, this is about your expertise and knowledge, right? If you go and say a third of the market is this subsect, but I don't really put any emphasis in knowing or learning. I know y'all are here, so I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm talking like, really researching and knowing the inventory and kind of getting to know what's out there. You really want to, I'm sorry, I did not obey this sign out here. Shh. All right, I'll turn this off. This is a big piece. Chattanooga, historically, is not a new construction market. So when you get people, consultants nationally, we have people come all the time in and kind of we're always looking at them, they're looking at us and all that. They come to Chattanooga and they're like, would you have this research form? Do you have this? Do you have that? We're like, no, we don't. We don't, because we don't have enough builders. We do not historically have a ton of new construction going on here. So we can tend to not be thinking about this market as much as if you were in Nashville or Atlanta and Birmingham and all that. So, in every city in Florida and Texas. But that's changing. Right now, we have national builders. We all know DR's in town. Lennar's coming. That's a national builder. They got a heat-seeking missile in this place. There's a lot of regional builders. There's Empire. We all seen Empire coming in. Empire is a regional builder turning national. There's national research going on. I saw us up on the New Home Association of Home Builders report when we were doing a national study, and I was sitting here in front of like thousands of builders, and Chattanooga was on the screen of target places to come and build. This is going to be new construction. Whether we just need to get with it and know like new construction and selling new construction is something that's good, a great opportunity to bring. Right now, the housing supply shortage is 7.2 million. So, you got a supply problem. We've known that. Builders can only build as fast as they can. Certain places they're building at higher speeds. Local builders are doubling their business. You know, everyone knows kind of have an affiliation with like Green Tech Homes. Well, Green Tech has doubled their production. Their land position is doubled. Communities are going to go from 9 to 19 by next year. This is happening at a big scale. And the cool thing is this. I want to just take this moment and we'll talk about the NAR and how new builders are approaching this NAR thing. But one thing's for sure, the builder's model, to some people's maybe question here on like, do builders have best interest in heart for like real estate community? New home builders really want to support the realtor community. It's going to be a safe zone when it comes to like commissions in the future. When this July turns, you're not going to have to worry about home builders supporting the real estate community. They're long-term minded. They know it's just a part of and bred in the National Home Builders and the National Realtors Association are like this. And so when you start to think through models that give you like safe zones where you don't ever have to worry about commission and support, new home communities, you're not going to have the DR Hortons and the Green Techs and the Pratts undercutting commissions for realtors. All right, so just want to go ahead and set that expectation. Even though I'm not speaking on behalf of them, it's just not a part of their model. Their model is to just bring in as many buyers because they have a lot of inventory to move, and y'all are a huge part of that. So that being said, lots of opportunities for us to focus on this. Do you want to add anything to that? I don't want to keep rambling here. Thanks. If there ever have any questions, I would love for you to like just speak up so I don't feel like I'm preaching too much. So I really want to go over real quick. This is just across the surface. There's some obvious stuff to this, but I want to make sure we're all in the same field to what it is to be a builder, new construction. That's like super generic, right? New construction is really best articulated into 3 spectrums. And I'm going to talk about the 2 polarized spectrums first. We all know what spec means, right? Speculative. A spec builder builds a home for the market. Y'all probably are most familiar with that in general real estate because it's inventory. A lot of times hi, how you doing? Welcome. It's available inventory that you can sell now. So someone's wanting to buy, you got something that's up, it's staged, you want to sell it. That's kind of, we're a little more known for that. Spec builders really only build for the market. They're not trying to customize anything. They don't have infrastructure to work out design options and things like that. They just go and they pre-design everything and they have that machine just do its thing. And when it's done, they'll sell it. So spec builders have a mission to provide something in the marketplace. Can't make any changes, right? A lot of times the way it goes, you just write a regular contract, 1% earnest money. You might ask for something, a little here and there, and then, you just buy that and move in, right? Then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is custom builds. Custom builds are like, they're confusing in their own way because it's like, where do you start, right? Who has the land? And I mean, when y'all do I'm sure everyone here does their new home consult. I meant not new home, sorry, I'm getting in. Buyer consultation. And you just probably get a little scared when someone sits down and goes, I really want to build and find some land. Do you know a builder? And you're like, like this is going to be, all right, I charge 20% commission. It's just like anything you can divert from that you can. Like, it's just, I'm sure y'all have like knee-deep obstacle overcomers to try to get people not to go down that route. And getting them off that is really tough because the expectations are ridiculous, right? There's so much unknowns, and they expect you to kind of maneuver you through buying land, knowing if it's going to perk and if you're even going to be able to build something on it and the cost to build. Then you're having to like find builders, and then you're trying to get quotes, and it's all stabbing in the dark. But it's available for people, right? Some people have systemized it a little better. Sometimes custom builders can custom build, but they have lots. And those are like, whew. Thank goodness, that's one thing I don't have to like get into, but I can connect you with a builder. Everyone has their different models on how to work with custom builders, but they're a little loaded guns. But you know that sometimes those can be pretty big transactions, right? I mean, because custom build's not like a 250. I mean, guys, if someone says 300, 400,000 custom build, just run for the hills, because that ain't happening if in any fairyland. But this, if you're going to do a custom build, normally you're going to be working with a buyer for like $1 million sale, and it's going to be something maybe that pays off, but it's going to be very complicated. Then you kind of have a hybrid type builder. And that's what is normally called in their world community builders. We may know them as production builders. But community builders, they're trying to be a little above, right? They kind of give you customization abilities, but kind of on some sort of rails. There's a bit of order. They have a design studio. They have the lots. They have the community. They have the floor plans. You know, you're not just going in there going, what do you want? And it's just like, I drew this on a napkin, and, you know, and then you're going off that crazy world. But on the same note, they're not spec builders where they're just like, hey, it is what it is. If you buy it or don't, I don't really care. Like, this is kind of a little of each, right? Now, the community builders are actually the biggest model in the new construction marketplace. If you go into the new construction marketplace, this is what everyone wants to be. You know, kind of like we all want to be listing agents and do nothing but listings, right? In the new construction world, community builders is kind of the goal for most builders. Spec builders are easy to get into the game. So a lot of times you have younger builders that are spec builders because they're like, I don't want to deal with a buyer. I have to get a designer. We have to do a studio. We have to like do a model. I have to have floor plans. Then when they come in, I have to have a sales team. It's like very complicated. I'll just build a house and sell it. You know? And normally spec builders do that. Custom builders are actually pretty easy too, because it's like, I don't have any expenses. You come in, I'll just hook you up with a designer, and usually pay as you go when you do a custom build. So there's really not that much risk here. These guys, the community builders, they've gone and bought the land, they've got the debt, they've got a huge infrastructure, their staff is like 30, 40 people high, they've got studios, and it's a machine that they have to like keep fed. But it gives your buyers the greatest opportunity because they don't have to compromise as much. It's not like take the spec or leave it, or let's go gallivanting around and trying to figure it all out by the hip. This is kind of like a systemized chaos in a way. And so community builders are like builders like Lennar and D.R. Horton. D.R. is kind of a streamlined version, almost a pre-order spec kind of version, but they're still a community builder. Pratt, we all know Pratt in town, right? And so they have options, they have systems, and normally they can build it more efficiently and at a more reasonable price, right? So just wanted to kind of like lay the base of understanding those three spectrums. There's pros and cons, and I want to go over them real quick to the pros and cons of each subsect. And I'll do it really, quick. I'm not going to get deep. But if y'all have any questions, definitely let me know. Builder versus buyer risk. Think of it that way. That's really what a lot of this comes down to. When you have contingencies and money and non-refundables, some buyers are not going to be very risk averse, right? Like, do I get my earnest money back if this deal doesn't work out? If they're like afraid of losing 1%, oh, sorry, better get a little aggressive there. If they're really kind of afraid of, if they're very risk averse, they need to just be on the spec side. Just buy. If you want a new home and you want it now and want it easy and don't want a lot of like risk, over here. The biggest risk to financial is the custom. So the way the custom works is it's usually you got to get your own construction loan. Does anyone know construction loans, right? Construction loan means that you have to go and you have to buy the land. You got to put like 20% down. You got to be able to do a loan, like to build the house. And when you're paying for that house that's a custom build, you're paying as you go. So guess what? You have a construction loan in addition to your existing housing. So it's very hard for a lot of people to do that. They're cutting a check and saying, hey, go do the foundation. Okay, that's going to be, $32,000. And you're like, $32,000. And the bank's like, all right, start paying me payments on $32,000. And then you're like, all right, framing. All right, that's a $64,000. You're like, $64,000. And they're paying their mortgage. The house is being built. The longer that goes, the harder their payment is because it's getting more expensive by the payment. So people who have money and financial capacity or all that, this is no big deal. To get what they want, that's worth it, But you're paying as you go. The builder doesn't have a lot of risk because they're getting paid, draws, and the buyer's holding a lot of risk to that, okay? So the buyer holds a ton of risk on this side. And then if the house ends up being like a bad builder, I mean, you can fire them, but you got that and you've already paid them. They walk away with their money, right? So no builder risk, all buyer risk. No buyer risk, all builder risk. Because the builder built it and you're like, I hope someone wants this. And you're like, yeah, you're screwed. Or, whatever. So it's a whole different spectrum. This here is kind of a balance. Community builds, the way it's been designed is you enter in a little risk. Usually you're putting a deposit down, but the builder is building it on their own dollar. The community builder is usually taking the loan and everything. But you got to realize they're still making customizations, remember? They're kind of turning the knobs and picking the colors and adding this and doing this. Their customization options is still tailored to them, but it's within restrictions that the builder has contained. Because over here they may go, so I want pelican wallpaper made of gold. And the builder's like, it's your house, I don't really care, just pay me and go. Here, the builder's not going to let them put pelican wallpaper made of gold because they might be stuck with it because they've got the loan on it, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of deposits, usually anywhere from 5 to 10%. And it's just look at it like it's a pre-order thing. And it cooks, and in about 7-8 months, it plops out on the end. And then that's when they get their own regular mortgage, if that makes sense. So that's normally how all three spectrums work. And the timelines are a little different. If you do a custom, if a buyer's like on a quicker timeline, this is a no-go. This is like someone who's like, oh, I mean, it's 2 or 3 years, it's all good. Like this can be a year or two. I usually tell people, like, I'm not trying to down, customs. It's just for a very specific buyer. But a lot of people, we all kind of like laughed and kind of rolled your eyes when you said that people come in. This gives you power to sit down and go, this is how new construction works on a custom side. You have 2 years, all this financing, all this risk, all this. And if they're like, yeah, then let's go. But if they don't, then you just can cut that, make that dead as quick as possible. The timeline and the spec we all know is, and we all like that, right? Get that thing going, get the commission in on 30 days, we're good. This is kind of an in-between. It's like 6 to 8 months is normal. So that's just kind of like setting that basic expectation. Price and quality. I'm going to go over that and then I'll be done with this little section. Okay. Custom should be the highest quality and the highest price. I mean, it's high quality. But when I say quality, that doesn't mean value per se. It's very specific to that buyer. Some of the worst resales on the market, investment-wise, are customs. And we all know why. They're not thinking of the next buyer. They're not thinking of the listing when they put it up. They're not thinking of anything. They're doing everything for them. And we all have gone in there and got a listing, except for the newbie, but you'll get one soon. And you go in there, and you're like, oh, and let me show you the water fountain with the, some naked dude sitting there with a microphone or something. You're like, oh, that's great. So everyone's got like, and it ages really fast, right, those customs. And they cost top dollar, so they want their money out of it, and they're just not going to get it. Then the specs are actually, sometimes the best priced ones. The specs are usually the best price. Because why? The builder's kind of like under the gun. I mean, they're paying a mortgage on it. You can sometimes get negotiations a little more on it because it's on the market, it's staged, holding fees, time's money, let's get this thing turned. So sometimes the specs have a little more meat on their bones, but your autonomy is not as high, but you know, you can get a pretty good deal on that. The custom, the hybrid, you pay for what you get, but it's usually done in a more contained way. They're not gonna, so it's a pretty good investment here, but it's not, it's gonna be a little higher price than specs, but not as high as customs. And it's also going to be, quality is going to be good, but remember, everything's kind of on a track. They're not sitting there with someone with a toothbrush with the tile going, yes, this is perfect. They wanted a toothbrushed tile grout or something. You know, it's not like anything that bougie, but it's not anything like, what? It is what it is, buy it or don't kind of thing. It's kind of an in-between. But you got to set expectations that the buyer, if someone's coming in going, I spent a whole $450,000 on this, and you're like, that's a pretty good deal. You're not going to get $1 million house. So there is a bit of expectations that it's going to be nice, but it's not going to be, you know, over the top, and it's not going to be like, you know, blown up. That makes sense. So, all right. I hope, is there anything you'd like to add to the?
We're not getting into like a console pros and cons.
No, yeah. So, yeah.
One thing I have really noticed that's cool is, you know, the building's holding a loan until, but by the time it's built, it's gone up in price a lot, so we've already got some equity, and that's really cool.
That is a really good point. Because customs, you're paying the interest, so you're losing your equity. But the builder is paying interest and holding fees and everything. And the thing is too, what I love about this section is there's skin, and this section in a way, spec, and this, is that the builder has skin in the game because they're paying, sometimes it's like, hey, you need to get that thing done. It's costing my buyer to rent. But they're paying right now 10.5% mortgages. Like, the builders have like $5,500 in holding fees a month. They want that thing to close. There's skin in the game to get that done as quick as possible. But like you said, you're building that equity because you fix the price. Now, some builders don't do fixed contracts, so you always want to be looking for that, and we'll kind of dive into that a little. But if it's a fixed price contract, that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone? Pro? You want to throw some things in there? No? Okay. I was looking for the pros here. I got a lot of. All right. So that being said, I really want to talk about sales. All right, that's just kind of like the overview. But let's get into like sales. Let's talk about like, okay, I've got a buyer, and new construction is 30% of the market. There's a few different spectrums in which a buyer can go. And you want to build your expertise, right? We all know one thing that Gary Keller's been preaching, and we all been preaching, we all been hearing, but we know when we're kind of getting amped up to another level, is when this NAR settlement is going to start coming down. One thing that we're going to be doing is to say, and our consultations are going to be real important, how well you position your expertise and your knowledge. And that's what I want to go into next, is beefing up your consultation. How many of y'all have what you would say a new buyer or a buyer consultation kind of crafted? Like you got your way of doing things. It's not by the hip. You've got your, every buyer goes through this funnel and this process and this speech and this, script or whatever. Can you raise your hands? Everyone that's got something established. Okay, great. So definitely want to make sure, obviously I'm sure that's being preached a lot. But in the new construction world, one thing that I want to go over is how you're going to be able to take some information and kind of sprinkle it in to your buyer consultation. This isn't meant, I'm going to go over this almost like I'm preaching a model or a formula, but I don't want you to necessarily take it and go, oh, that's what I'm going to do. But take it and go, this is what I do. That's what new construction world does. I think I can kind of blend it a bit so that I can pick up that extra 30%, opportunity in the marketplace, if that makes sense. So What I'm going to do is I want to kind of go through the exploration formula, all right? And this is like, listen, this is something just like Gary Keller's teachings is like, you could read 14 books and go through all kinds of classes. Same thing goes here, but I'm just going to skirt across the surface, okay? And I'm happy to go deeper on this. But one thing to remember, this has got to be something tattooed on. Can you tattoo? I wish you could tattoo invisible ink, and then if you like rub it with water, it says something. Then it dries out. Probably not good because when you start sweating, it'll. Anyway, every customer is on a mission to improve their lives. That is obviously a real estate mantra, right? We know that anytime someone comes in your world, and they're like, I'm thinking about buying a house, there is some level of improvement that they're thinking about. No one's wanting to go backwards, right? So we got to start off with the absolute basic. Now, when we get into identifying that, one thing that we want to do is we want to kind of talk about like identifying urgencies. You know, one thing that's your first goal is there's something driving the conversation, right? How many times you calling up people or talking to friends and it's like, hey, just want you to know I'm in real estate, in case anyone's wanting to improve their lives in the housing world, right? The moment someone comes up and says, I might be, and you bring them in for a consultation, right? And you're sitting down there and you're kind of like figuring out what's going on. The thing that you want to always start with is that before you get into anything, you need to keep kind of always think of everything in a funnel. Don't get to the house. Don't let them get to the house. Don't let them get straight into the nitty-gritty and the details. Pull them back into the clouds before they land, because everyone wants to get to you and go, I'm looking for this, you know, or do you have a 4-bedroom, or I got to move I want to be in the South Side or something, I want to be on Main Street, or, you know, something really quick. You want to pull it back out, and you want to explore their urgencies. You got to identify what is driving their desires. Is it circumstantial or personal? These are the two things that we kind of teach big on. Is it something that's pushing them or pulling them? Have you ever bought something, you're just desiring it? You're just desiring it. It's like a car, it's a commercial, it's clothes, it's whatever. Just because you buy new clothes doesn't mean the old clothes don't fit. Sometimes it does. Anyway, so the thing that we want to do is we want to kind of understand better what's driving their urgency. Don't let them get into the details yet. You're a consultant. You're a professional. One thing I preach all the time is the difference between a sales clerk and a sales professional. Sales clerks is the people who come in and go, do you have a large medium? Or a large red shirt, long sleeve? And you're like, yep, right over there on that rack. You know, that's what we kind of want to do. But there's no meat to that. There's no, roots to that transaction. So you really want to understand what's driving them. Is it something that's pulling them or pushing them? Now, what a personal example would be like if they're relocating or they have a life change or they have something that's driving them, gunshots in a neighborhood, that'll make you move real quick, Understanding that is something extremely important. And this is a calculation I want you to write down. This is something I really, 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 really want you to write down. This is what I try to get. You know how we love math? Because there's no changing math. If someone comes up and says 2 plus 2, you're like, 4, and I don't really care where you're born or what language you speak. It's 4. So mathematical sales is current dissatisfaction and future promise always is greater than cost and fear. So current dissatisfaction with adding in future promise, that equation is always greater than cost and fear. That's the equation for a sale, by the way. That's the equation for a successful sale. If you're ever going to sell anything, current dissatisfaction and future promise is always going to be greater than cost and fear. This is not that when you stop and think about it, it's like, duh. Like that's probably the most obvious thing. You don't have to be a sales professional to kind of understand that. Well, what I want to do is kind of say Sometimes we get sales and we really didn't deserve it. We just kind of were in the right place at the right time. You know, someone just came and it's like, oh my God, like gunshots. I need to move. I'm not staying another night in this house. We're in a hotel. Let's buy this thing. You're like, all right. You're just right place at the right time. You're just glad that they knew your name. And because their current dissatisfaction is so high that whatever the cost and fear is not anywhere near their dissatisfaction of their situation. But here's where sales, you miss the mark in sales many times, as in us and everyone does, is when we understand their current dissatisfaction, but their fear and costs are higher than their current dissatisfaction. And our forming of the future promise is not leveraging them above that cost and fear, okay? And I'm going to play that out. And this is where new construction becomes a valuable proposition. And this is why I'm wanting to kind of like tie this into new construction, because new construction invokes the imagination. New construction sometimes is something that is very it's romanced in the eyes of people. You know how, have you ever sold a house and you're talking about renovating it? You know, oh, you blow this wall out and imagine like having like the kitchen open to this. And people are like, and their imagination is running wild to the point where that future promise of like having this old charming house in St. Elmo that's got this openness with like the windows that are historic. And it's just, they probably had a current dissatisfaction, but their cost and fear was keeping them from pulling the trigger. And in that kind of dreamy, like future promise of how it's going to lay out in their life, pushed it above and got them really excited to buy, right? This is kind of the tools in which we want to kind of like leverage new construction. All right, so let's go over, chime in anytime, go into what current dissatisfaction is. A higher dissatisfaction, the higher the dissatisfaction, the greater the customer's urgency, right? Future promise is picturing the customer's hope for a better future and satisfying their dissatisfaction. So if you've not explored, one thing that I tell my sales team is like, if you have not really fully explored their pain points and what's driving them, and it's just kind of like, why are you moving? This is the common thing, like, why are you moving? Just relocating. Coming from St. Louis to here. Great, what are you looking for? And we just went straight into compatibility. Like, that was your pain point. I'm moving, I'm relocating. You're never going to be able to flip that back when you get into like, when their fear and cost starts to always keep them from really ever wanting to buy. All you've got is, you got to buy. You're relocating. And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't make me want to do this. I might as well rent.
Yeah. Let me just give a classic example is a relo buyer. You're on the phone with them. They're like, well, I just don't see much on the market. I don't know the area at all. So inevitably they wind up, if you can't quickly get them buying in that you have what it takes to get them to the future promise, they're going to default to renting. And what you guys need to know in the new construction world is a lot of new construction sales are relos that went from California to renting into Chattanooga to buying new construction, right? And so that's what we're trying to have you guys do, is learn how to integrate this formula into your buyer's consult, and have the tools to be able to walk them through new construction communities and options. Yeah,
I mean, it's a real number. I have the blessing and the curse to look at like the statistics of like one company, at least, like Green Tech Homes last year sold 178 transactions for over $88 million, and only 28% of them involved realtors. But the mantra from Green Tech is, y'all get out and get to know the realtors and try to get realtor business. It's not like we can kind of think, well, if someone's only giving out 30 or 28% of commissions, they're trying to like stab or pull out the realtors. But instead, It's just not there, right? So there's just so much. And when I wanted to add up the commissions that were just sitting on the table, that is, and the thing is I know good and well when someone says they've been here and they rented and they kind of know what they want, that someone helped explore or frame that. It wasn't all on the internet. So it's like this thing where you just kind of know, like, some poor realtor that went out there when they first came, went and showed them everything they wanted. They did whatever they wanted them to do. They were their chauffeur and said, you want to see this? I'll show this. And if you want to do that, I'll do that. But then they settled, and then when they found it on their own, they just went and did it. And it really isn't that buyers want to cut people out. It's just kind of like we form this mindset when we're not integrating it as a part of our consultation. They don't see you as, like, it almost sees like, hey, I'm general real estate. I show you houses that are on the market. You're not saying that, but they're kind of getting that from the way you're asking questions and you're showing homes and the solutions you bring. And then when new construction is not a part of the creativity process or exploration, they start to assume that there's a lot of, and then we can tend to be on the other end going, buyers are liars. They never told me that they wanted, new construction. And it's kind of like, well, they maybe formed an opinion based off of the way we were asking questions or positioning opportunities, if that makes sense. So, and buyers can be liars. I'm not saying that. But it is a balance there. Now, so we want to keep current dissatisfaction and future promise. Like, the goal is to make that so skyrocketed, current dissatisfaction and future promise so high that any fears that they have of like, oh, but I might get a better deal after July when the prices go down or something stupid, or interest rates, or all the little obstacles that people give won't be near as strong when they have. Now, how do you get current dissatisfaction and future promise sky high? How do you get someone to just be on fire to make a decision? Have you just stop and think about a buyer that you had that was like, you didn't even finish the sales presentation. I want it. This is it. Or, can you think of someone that, I'd like to hear y'all's thought, like, when you had a buyer who was real stoked about any property, I'm not talking new construction, just anything, and you think of it in light of current dissatisfaction and future promise, can anyone give an example of a buyer who said, like, my dissatisfaction is so great of where I'm at right now, like my lifestyle that I want to improve, and what you're providing me as an option is so good that I really, really, will buy this, like, hands down, won't even think about it, right full price or even more. Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who, his mother-in-law got a divorce, and she was moving into the house with them. So
current dissatisfaction through the freaking roof. You don't even have, your future promise is just to end that pain. Right, yeah.
And so the house we found had a really incredible mother-in-law suite, like a whole separate apartment kind of built in onto the house. And
Wow.
Like, okay, this is it, we're done. Like that, there was no reason to look anywhere else. It meant everything. That was really the only need they had was, we need to do something with my mother-in-law, that she's in the house but not like, she has her own space where she can go and kind of, but she's integrated.
So how did you find out that storyline? How did you find out that was the situation? You obviously weren't living with them. So, like, was that in a consultation? Did she just spout it out? Did she?
The reason he called me, like, that was the
first thing that they said.
My mother-in-law's about to move into the house. I've got to have somewhere to live.
All right, so that's, the thing is this, great story. Thank you for sharing. I love it. Like, this is real. But here's the thing. We all know about 99% of buyers, when you have a high dissatisfaction, they throw it out there. Got to go. If there's dissatisfaction is mediocre, you have to pull it out of them a lot of times, right? And this is the problem, because we want everyone to desire their next house so much that we don't have to be artsy or crafty. We just want you to come in and go, oh my gosh, please sell me a house next weekend. I've got it. Like, we kind of want that. We love those. Those are gimmies, but let's just admit, they're just softballs we get once in a while. Some realtors, That's all they live off of, is the easy ones that come in that have pain so high that but everyone else, they're just kind of like running themselves ragged. And if a buyer buys, it's because they're exhausted or their pain just got through the roof finally. But to be an artist on this, to be good at it, you have to extract. Remember, all we are mirrors. That's all we are. And if it's like a mirror on the wall, what's my highest dissatisfaction of all or whatever, like we have to be extractors of understanding their pain and understanding their current dissatisfaction. And through that, we do discovery, motivations, the why, not the what. Oh my gosh, I get so tied up in knots when the sales team that I coach gets straight to what the buyer's asking. Hey, I need a 4-bedroom. I need a mother-in-law suite. See, he could have handled it differently. Do you have a house with a mother-in-law suite? And you didn't ever ask, didn't understand the pain, wasn't there to leverage it, to connect it. You may not even value it. And if you're not asking their motivation, you really don't care. You care about more of the sale than the buyer. So the motivation, the why behind the what, one thing I teach is 3 deep. If you didn't ask that 3 deep, then you just got what you thought you needed so you could go on to the next question. Curious people want to know why on one item. I need a mother-in-law suite. There's got to be a reason. Why? Because my mother-in-law needs to live in it. Okay, that's obvious. Yeah, right. So going deeper, you'll find that some things that are their dissatisfaction aren't as bigger, but in the exploration you might find other things that end up rising to the top. Let me ask you this. Do buyers go through counseling before they call you? Like, I wish. We all wish. Then they may not call us. But counselors really try to get to the bottom of it because their whole job is like, yeah, all that surface crap. That surface, you can pull that with everyone else, but I'm a pro. I do this for a living. Let's get deeper with this. Come on. Now, we don't want to be counselors. Get a bunch of couches in our offices and do consultations that way. But the whole purpose is we do care and we want to know. We don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste their time. And we want to be as valuable as possible. And asking 3 deep on their motivations and their drivers is absolute. But here's the thing. Sometimes people go motivations and they leave it with that. There's another 3 deep category. Okay, so you have motivations. What's motivating you to move? That's what's getting you big picture. Then you really got to be specific. What's wrong right now? Here's the thing that's the bold question we don't want to ask. This is where you say, have you read the books, Fearless Conversations? Like, when you get into this fearless conversations, we almost don't want to ask this question because we want to take good as good enough and just run with it. But you almost want to go like, why are you calling me? Like, why? You don't want to say it like that, obviously. But the kind of like the premise is, like, what's wrong? What's so wrong? Why don't you just fix the situation? Why don't you just, like, you almost want to try to solve their problem without moving. But by doing that, people get a little argumentative, not like in a bad way, but in more of a, hey, I want to, this is why. Like, my pantry's just, I don't have a good pantry, my kitchen's dated. Well, why don't you just update it? Now, you don't want to ask that because you're afraid he's going to go, that's a good idea. But trust me, they're not. But the question is, why is it so important? Why can't you solve the issue? What is drive? Because those little drivers are real gems for you in the future. Remember, you're storing up. You're storing up. You're going to kind of be the mirror, remember? So you're piecing this mirror together. Every time you go 3 deep, think of it like a mirror that's been shattered and you have all the pieces off of it. That sounds like a dramatic movie or something. And you have just little pieces that you're only seeing a part of you. Every single time you're going 3 deep and asking these specific questions, you're just putting another mirror for them to see the picture clearly. Not only you see it, but for them to see it. Then future promises. This is where it gets real crafty, because now you're trying to get them to verbalize what their solution is. Again, you're a mirror. You're a question asker. You're a counselor. What do you want your life to look like? Like, these are powerful questions that sometimes sound like some script, but man, when I've seen sales teams implement this stuff, they get gems instead of some of these little rocks that they're running off of. They start to get valuable responses to be asking, what do you want your life to look like? Verbalize. Have them verbalize and visualize what the solution is to this, okay? So getting into motivations, dissatisfactions, and letting them verbalize their future promises, then you have to ask yourself, hey, how's it going? Okay, no worries. What in that motivation, dissatisfaction, future promise, do you have enough? This is some, I preach, do you have enough in your bank account here to buy this sale? Do you have enough? Come on, like, you know. You want to believe, so take optimism, burn it. All right, don't take this like, I'm going to run out and just start showing you houses because you said you wanted to go see houses. You got to get to a point as a professional where when they communicate their motivation, dissatisfaction, future promise, you're like, you are a candidate for someone who's actually going to buy. And I know that seems like, well, they came in, they called, they want to see a house, like obviously they want to buy. We all know that's not true. So like when someone gets into, when you told that story, I mean, you knew you're going to buy. The only question is, can I get there fast enough, you know? Like, but understanding their dissatisfaction, motivation, and future promise. So here's the fun part. You just got all that. You pieced it together. But guess what you just did? You just pieced together all their mirror, and it's not turned on them. Think of it that way. You just pieced it all together, and you're seeing it real clearly. I see who you are. This is perfect. But even at that point, even when they've said it, they've not. Anyone have kids? This starts to get into more parenting than anything. There is this difference between you preaching, like make your bed, you need to do this. When you grow up, this is what it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. You know, you got all that preaching, but there's this bit of like engagement part where if they don't take ownership, then it's not activated. It's like a powerless, disconnected cable. You have this mirror you're seeing, and they're not seeing. And so you got to finish the transaction, and this is what's called visual agreements. The visual agreements is 2 parts. All right, and I can always send y'all any of this stuff if you ever want me to like send you some stuff. I'll send you anything you want. You summarize their dissatisfaction question. You say, so you're telling me that if you stay in your mother-in-law's situation and you explain that, then that's something you're going to have to kind of put up with, you know, and you almost want to kind of leverage timing in that. Like, how long do you know, are you going to be able to kind of endure that? You know, like literally, I keep saying gunshots because someone literally just came up and bought a house like in one day because there was gunshots going on in their house and they just like wrote a contract that day. Like connecting and asking, turning the mirror and asking them, I just want to be clear and have them engage in saying yes or engage in that conversation. And then say, so you're looking, and you summarize it, but like you're looking for a floor plan that is better tailored for your lifestyle, or with a 4-bedroom, with an ensuite. You're summarizing everything. And so this future promise solution is you're communicating what it visualizes to have, you know, an ensuite bath for overnight guests and a modern kitchen design with plenty of counter space and a community with walkable amenities in order to stay active. Is that everything? Is there anything else I'm missing? Like you're having, and they're saying, yeah, they're kind of like agreeing. And there's this moment where they stamp their name on something that you've explored and you've visualized. Now, that's not that different than if you've gone through basic real estate coaching. You kind of know the importance of finding pain, solutions, you know, all that. The thing that's a little different in new construction is that you're broadening the questions. Remember the always be closing? You know, that classic Glengarry, Glen Ross fans out here? Don't watch it. So this classic sales is always this ABC, always be closing, always have the close in mind. Well, just asking a bunch of questions and connecting as a counselor is not always just thinking of the close, right? You really want to be engaging further discussions about communities, lifestyle. Keep it out of. How many times y'all have lost a contract, someone not wanting to ride a house because of something very stupid in the house? I mean, tell me the stupidest thing. What, a stupid thing. Light fixtures. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The power boxes, electrical boxes. Just can't do it. Yeah. They can keep my money. Wow. All right.
So my guy couldn't see the TV while he was cooking.
Couldn't see the TV. Those are fun. Well, thank y'all for sharing the crazies. I know we've all, I could probably, yeah. We could write a book on it. It's important to them, but here's the thing. We all know, this is something I always want to remind, that cost fear, you know how, and when people lash out, we know this in like counseling and stuff, like if someone lashes out or they're whatever, we know there's something deeper, right? There's always something deeper than that. And just like when we're trying to uncover current dissatisfactions and future promises and stuff like that, there's deeper, and the shallow only goes so far, but the same thing goes with cost and fear. Like, it wasn't those things. We all know it wasn't the TV that he couldn't see or the electrical boxes. Oh, yeah. Well, that's, yeah.
Actually, not the one as far as speaking up to me, they didn't want to live in construction because they were confused about something that the CEO was talking about.
Yeah, right.
They're like, I'm not going to look up at that.
Yeah. Well, there is something I want to give you. It's not a bulletproof vest, but one thing I want to encourage you to do is if you know you're going to live and die by the same sword of the sale, and if you really had someone come in and say, my God, I love this countertop, this is amazing, I want this house, and they're buying it for something trivial, you're going to lose that deal over something trivial. And as long as you keep everything in the trivial and in the shallow, you'll find you'll lose every deal and every buyer for the same bandwidth, from the same frequency, from that trivial. You have to find substantive stuff. This is really roots that go deep in the sale that you can revert back to. To go like, I mean, how many times I've had people come in and they just love the community. They're like, oh, and our friend lives there. Our kids can play, and I just loved, like, they fell in love with the lifestyle. And then before you know it, it's like a faucet that's causing them to lose sleep and is going crazy. They never bought the faucet, right? It really was a bigger picture. And when you bring them back to like what matters and what they care about and how in the future this is really what's the deep reasoning why you're making this decision, they realize that they tied themselves up in a knot for something, obviously you couldn't save a marriage, but so that was a dead deal. But but my point is when you go through current dissatisfaction and future promise, don't lie the future promise on something trivial that could be replaced many, many times. What I mean by always be closing, I guess what I'm trying to say is find something in that future promise that is something that really hinges that sale so it doesn't just fly off when it has the first hard breeze. So, I want you to speak on the one thing I want to say is this when it comes to new construction. Remember, I just said that a third of all sales is new construction in this marketplace, right? And there's new builders coming in, new opportunities. If you want to be a future promise giver, remember current dissatisfaction, future promise, the stronger those are, the better. If you really want to beef up your future promise muscle, because you can't remember current dissatisfaction is you're just pulling out and but the solutions that you're bringing, the more you invest in the knowledge of the marketplace, in particular new construction and opportunities, the more when someone's bringing dissatisfaction and you're flipping that mirror around and you're like, now imagine living in this and with that. And you're like, really? Is there a place that exists like that? And you're like, yes. You know, that's that moment where you invested in the market. Because what I want to argue is this. I'm going to take a step back. Rookies. No, it's all right. I love it. I'm so excited for you. But when you're trying to figure out what the marketplace has to sell, and you haven't kind of pieced that together yet, you're really hoping for people with high dissatisfaction in that early stage. Someone who's just like, I'm on fire! And you're like, come to the water! You know, that's kind of the sale we really want. They want their dissatisfaction to be so high that we can just connect some marketplace MLS opportunities, right? When the appetite of a current dissatisfaction is mediocre, then you really have to not only do a master of exploring, but you also have to create a greater vision of future promise opportunities. And that's your market expertise too. You can just be like, can anyone name any area that they feel like they're really good at? Any product, anyone, just anything. Oh, I'm great at old houses. I've sold 40 of them. Or St. Elmo, boy, I've sold so many St. Elmo houses, I'm blue in the face. Or can anyone speak on anything they feel like they're... If someone came up and said, I'm looking to buy this, you're like, oh yeah, I've done 40 condos. I'm condo king or whatever. Anything. Yeah. Anything. I know y'all are so humble. You're such a humble group. Your neighborhood. There you go. No one knows your neighborhood more than the person living there, right? How many times you live in, all of us live in a neighborhood, someone lives in a neighborhood, whatever, well, or a condo or whatever, you know it so much that if someone else lists it, you're like, good luck. You're going to be like selling it from the outside. You don't even know what's going on here. I could tell them what their neighbor is and what food they like. And I mean, you could be such a robust knowledge. So do you think that when they come in and someone came into your neighborhood and had a current dissatisfaction that was still a little below their cost and fear, and they were a little indifferent about that house that someone else was selling, and they came up to you and you're like, do you like living in this neighborhood? And you're like, I'll throw a bone to the agent trying to sell this, and you just start to open their eyes about the awesomeness of the parties and the gatherings and the trail that they can't see and all that stuff, and they're like, you just gave this future promise bump that an expert or a knowledgeable person could bring, if that makes sense. So I'm saying this to say, guys, new construction, the neat thing about new construction is many of them have experts that spend their whole days trying to best understand that, okay? And, you know, I know you guys on the corners here do sales in new construction. And you know the build, right? You know your community, you know all the ins and outs and stuff like that. If someone goes to your build totally on their own trying to figure it out, their future promise they could deliver is only a portion of maybe what you could tack on for them, right? They usually call you. The inside scoop, right? Rachel, same thing. Like when you're selling one of your communities and someone goes and shows it on their own, versus calling you up and saying, hey, can you give me the scoop of what's going on in this community and the builder and the warranty and all that stuff? I mean, you feel like you add to the future promise of, yeah. So like listing agents do too, but in new construction, the thing is most of these builders have a representative that has gold that you want to connect to. There's a little bit of like what I call a peacock agent who wants to look like a value to their buyer to the point where they want to run everyone else off, okay? But it's really all show, and they're not bringing anything more substantive to not only the sale, but also to, what I like to liken it to is if you had your laptop, you would probably plug it into that outlet because it makes sense, it's closest, it's compatible. But if you're like, nah, I'd rather run it with an extension cord out to the meter, take the meter off, somehow rewire it to connect straight to the meter, blow myself up in the process. Like, no one would do that. You would go, a lot of times, new construction representatives is really what you want to be leveraging. Resource them, because every builder has that expertise that they've just spent all their time learning, and all you have to do is just tether with them. And boy, I'll tell you what, it'll boost. They're not there to kind of hijack. You're protecting your buyer because you know the current. This is what I have found. People who don't really do consultations, they don't know their buyer. They're extra careful because they don't really know. They're trying to figure it out themselves. You know what I mean? The better you do and knowing your buyer, you're like, I'm not worried about this. I go in here, it's either going to be or not be, because I'm going to just keep pulling that mirror up going, is this what? It is. It looks exactly like what you were wanting. Or, it doesn't match. Remember. You know? So, but leveraging a representative will help boost that future promise. You want to speak on that? Because that's something you actually do a lot.
Yeah, so
well.
I think a lot of us are really good at, in the consult, we're pretty good at actually getting to like the dissatisfaction, and pretty good at, you know, honing in on what the cost and fear is. I think where the great separator is, once you do this, you know, he who has the most vivid options to solve the current dissatisfaction is the one that wins. And so, how many of you have been in a buyer's consult and you're asking questions and you're getting more and more discouraged as you're talking to them because you're thinking to yourself like, God, I don't know if there's anything out there for this person. You know what I mean? And like you're actually like, you can feel yourself like shrinking in your seat. And what I have found is, as a real estate generalist, you know, the more I can taste and experience the new construction and what's up and coming, the more as they're talking, you're starting to formulate what you think you're going to be presenting to them, even as you're sitting there in the consult. And if you don't have like your subconscious primed with new construction community data, you're going to have less, you know, you're going to have less firepower to get their future promise to a point where they overcome cost and fear. And so I can't tell you how many times I've just went and, out of curiosity, explored a community, and I didn't have a buyer. I just wanted to know, what are you guys selling? What's the price? What are the benefits? And then you talk to somebody who has spent, you know, 2 hours a day thinking through all the benefits of this community, and you're a mile and a half from Publix, and there's a boat ramp down here, and, you know, and you've got all the information in the back of your head. I can't tell you how many times a week later I'm having a conversation and I run into a buyer and I wind up going and selling them what I learned about a week prior. I can't tell you how many times that's happened, over and over and over. And I'm going to give you a little hack that Jeremy didn't talk about, and this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think it's invaluable. And that is, he talked about you've got a shattered mirror, and as you're asking questions, you're unlocking, and you're picking up pieces, and you're putting that mirror together. I think a critical piece for future promise are the financial advantages. And if you can have your buyer with their calculator in the console to do basic, I do this, I had a renter, this is like a month and a half ago. I have a rental in Heritage Walk. And I just straight up asked her, I was like, why are you renting? Like, I started asking her questions, and guys, I wasn't in the mindset of like, ooh, I'm gonna convert them into a buyer. I just wasn't even in that mindset. I was just like, why are you renting? started asking questions, and I was like, let me just show you something. Get your calculator out. And all I did was I had them take 300,000. I had them multiply it by 0.04, so 4% appreciation year over year. I had them divided by 12. And I was like, you're paying yourself this much money a month, plus you're paying a note down. And like the light bulb went on. And I should have you guys do it, because when you don't do it, it's not that exciting.
Yeah.
Serious, like get your calculator out. Let's just do it right now. So I had her get the calculator out. And I said, all right, take 300,000, multiply it by 0.04. I was like, that's 12 grand. I said, now divide that by 12. Divide by 12. I said, the day you purchase a home at 300,000, based on national appreciation, and if you had that graph on your phone, that would be helpful. I was like, you can set your watch to the reality that your home's going to appreciate by 4% if you hold on to it year over year. Chattanooga is out paced that for years and years now. I said, the day you own a home, you're paying yourself $1,000 a month to pay your mortgage. And then I ran like a percentage calculation on paying the note down, you know? And so I'm like, why are you renting? And the light bulb went on. And so this goes back to that, you know, if you're shallow in the beginning, then something trivial will blow it up. But you can pull people, if you can pull people back when they get cost and fear to the financial advantages throughout this process, that's a piece of the mirror that you should use in every single buyer's consult.
Yeah.
Every single time. Because people get excited about getting back to Jeremy's first point. People, if they're sitting down with you, they want to improve their life. Right? There's a reason why they want to buy a house. There's some sort of improvement. And if you can every single time nail vividly the reality that they're improving themselves financially, that's a piece of that mirror that's going to stick throughout the transaction. Now, with new construction, here's what we know. You buy on the front end of a community, right? What's going to happen to the prices as the community goes through its phases? Raise and raise and raise and raise and raise and raise. So, and I'm putting myself on the spot here, but how many new communities that are just starting right now can you name? How many? New communities that you know that they're coming down the pike. Right? So here's a great example. I'm sure Jeremy has 2 communities that he knows about that's coming that Green next to. Probably, right? Yeah. 2 communities. They're not breaking ground yet. They're in the future. But that's the kind of information that the general public, they crave that. That all of a sudden you're growing your value proposition. And you're working with investors. It's like, hey, have you ever just thought about buying new construction in the front end of the community? Because it's just, you want security in your asset. It's a guarantee, you know? These are the types of things, if you're immersing yourself in communities and you're curious, and these are just little practical, like when you're driving around, you're about to show a buyer, if you drive by a community, drive in. Meet whoever's there. Call the number. Ask a bunch of questions.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if someone called up and said, hey, what's going on here? Don't bother me unless you have a buyer. Like, obviously you'd be like, oh, we're building this, or we got this little, cul-de-sac going on, or we love, anytime you get a buyer, just whatever, just plugs here, we'll just keep putting more bullets in this, like, this gun that's going to empower you
That's
to
right.
to kind of like connect those dots. And, you know, like he's saying, when you're doing, beyond social media, I'm assuming everyone's kind of got some social media thing going on or email, but like just friend yourself with every builder you could possibly friend yourself with. Watch, they're usually posting all kinds of little nuggets and things and launches. And it's not necessarily you have to keep up with all the specifics. It's just knowing where the plugins are so that you can plug in when that time comes. And it's hard because it's almost like an MLS that's not an MLS in a way. It's just like a lot. But it's a little at a time, over time, just keeping it front of mind versus it being something that's out of sight, out of mind unless a buyer comes in and shows interest. That's not really the time you want to learn it. You want to be doing little nuggets here and there just to keep yourself a basic awareness. I think you can speak on like, no one's expecting you to be a pro at everything. They just want you to be a resource, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the more you can just educate yourself with what's coming down the pike in new construction, the more you're going to be able to enhance people's options in terms of future promise. So, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So that's I know that we were going to go over a bit of like how to maneuver through it, but here's one thing I want to say real quick. Maneuvering through the home purchase process is really just to say each builder does it differently. And remember we talked about spec builders, community builders, and custom builders. Each category does it differently, right? So really the best thing you want to do is really connect with a representative of that particular environment and just go like, what's your process? And just be flexible with that process, because normally if they created a process, it's really to help everyone. No one wants to sell something in new construction that someone's going to be ticked later. This is something to remember in new construction. New construction is like getting in a relationship with the seller. The seller, on a resale, they close, they're gone. You know what I mean? Like, here's your disclosures there, see ya. Like, new construction, they're with them for a whole year after closing with warranty. So the last thing they want to do is get someone to the table and they're misinformed, miscommunicated, and be frustrated. And then that's when you find out. So normally they have a process so that everyone is on the same page and that the expectations are aligned. But each builder kind of does it different. So you just want to connect and go, what's your process? So that I can conform our process to your process because it's with everyone's best interest in mind. Now, you obviously got your radars up and you're watching things and making sure and calling the broker, is this normal? What's up? All that kind of stuff. But just the process, when you try to do the process the way you do resale or something else and you're just kind of pushing against like the process that they have in place, you're really not going to represent your buyer the best way, and you're going to go through a lot of work that you're not going to have near as much information, and then you're going to find that you're going to waste your time in a way. So just want to encourage you to just kind of like reach out and try to figure out what process that builder operates under, and then, that'll help you. And then when it comes to the NAR, I want to kind of touch on that. I can't speak on every builder. But I know from everyone that I network with that the NAR is not going to affect in any way, form, or fashion. The way the builders are going to operate is normally under some sort of like network that you have. So you have a network of realtors who stay connected with that with that builder. And that one seller is pretty much going to be able to say, we pay buyer's agents the commissions they pay, so there's no disturbance. So I know there's going to be this weird world where like you're going to have to call or try to figure out what listings have what commissions and all that stuff. Normally, most of what I've heard the builders, they're just going to be saying, we're paying commissions, don't worry about it, just keep bringing your buyers like the like the olden days kind of thing. But the good thing is kind of imagine like a community builder may have like 1,000 lots and builds going on. So kind of, would it be nice to know like, all right, at least that 1,000, I know I don't have to call every time and worry about those kinds of things. But I can't speak. You just want to kind of take a moment to get to know the policies when that comes for each builder and see what they're going to be doing. But I've heard that it's not going to be changing for the builder community. So that all being said, would love to. If you have to head out, then we're pretty much done. But if you have any further questions, I'm here. We can all just start asking questions or picking brains or collaborating or anything like that. Anyone have any questions?
I was just thinking how good it would be to come up with a construction packet. Maybe list out and update annually all the communities by builders. And then we can have the price ranges and share that on the resource. And have it organized early, like how you have the spec build versus community versus custom. And we can have it organized by that as well.
Yeah. That's great. You really, because I'll say this, guys. I don't know if you have friend yourself with other people and colleagues and stuff like that. Get LinkedIn or whatever. Man, I tell you what, it's fun to watch other markets and agents, how they do other markets. Everywhere I've gone, I've tried to connect with realtors all over the country. And it's just fascinating how proactive a lot of people take this. I mean, there's sometimes people have whole video hey, we're here at the model home at this place, and they got their social follow-up or a YouTube video on this. Sounds like they're promoting this community, but what they're doing is they'd rather get that lead for anyone interested in that community. And when people Google something Cove or whatever, it pops up your video and face, and then they call you, and you're hijacking that lead, and you know what's going on. And there's so much creativity to that makes you just, the sky's the limits, But yeah, so that's a really good idea. Yeah.
That's one of the number one mistakes I've encountered is somehow your buyer ends up at a new builder because I've noticed by not mentioning in my buyers.
Right.
So you don't want them ending up at the builder's site first.
Yeah.
You want to be there with them, right?
Well, so I can't speak on policies for everyone, but a policy for Green Tech is if you register them, they're yours. No matter if you write a contract and you didn't show up, they're yours. So a lot of builders register because they don't want to be sitting there at the end or a week after going, that's my buyer. And it's they never even said it. And we actually asked and they said no one. And we just, and it makes them look like they just stole your buyer. But on the same note, if you register it, it's kind of almost a protective bubble. Now, not all builders do that, but that's a good exercise to do.
What do you mean by register? With the builder?
Yeah, so not the builder. Most builder, well, again, it depends on, there's a lot of fragmented builders out there that I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but a lot of times the larger outfits have an ISC or they have a system or a database that if you go with Sally Smith, you're not giving a phone number, but it's Sally Smith calls you. I'm working with them. They showed some interest in there, and I'm trying to get something scheduled, but I just want to make sure if they just don't call me and show up there, I'm a part of that deal kind of thing. So there's some builders that they have those kinds of policies in place, and it can give you a protective zone, if that makes sense. But you want them involving you, but sometimes they get a little absent-minded, and that can protect you from, yeah.
Pratt is having an agent tour today, 1:30 to 4.
Uh-oh, you better go.
They're offering prizes and charcuterie and wine and desserts.
There you go.
And they said, join us for a progressive-style Bainbridge community open house where you can tour move-in-ready homes and preview under-construction homes that'll be just in time, ready for your buyers, blah, blah, blah.
That's great. That's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of just being, proactive. It's worth your time. You don't have to do anything more than go in there. And it's not like anyone's trying to sell you or anything. They're just there to kind of connect and resource. They're just kind of uncovering the outlet for you so that you know what to plug into when the time comes. So
I've found that past clients, if they're watching you on social media, let's say you went to that event and you just did a little social media of at this new community, just give a couple of details. Your clients are watching you, you know, and it can become a conversation piece when you're talking to past clients, when you're lead generating. And you can even think the more you internalize the new communities that are coming up, when you call in your database your past client who lives in Tyner, you know that, you know, D.R. Horton's doing a development 2 minutes from their house that you just toured. That becomes a whole conversation. Does that make sense? And you're the expert now. So just the more you can incorporate it into your marketing, your social media, your conversations with your past clients, the more when opportunity arises, you're going to be prepared to capitalize on it.
And there's many builders have like incentive programs. I mean, I know Green Tech's giving away like a trip to Mexico to their top sellers, and you know all this stuff. Like, and there's agents that almost every big builder has some incentive. You can actually make more money, and the more you work with them, the more when you get in a situation where you need them to pull a favor, you're name dropping at that point. Like, hey, bro, like, you know, I gave you 4 deals. Come on, let's make this thing happen. Like, you become a name brand. Like, there's so much value. And then but when you do it a few times, you kind of know it, and you just, you know, it's just one less mindless sale, you know, because it just becomes easier, you know. So it's, yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of
Yeah.
experience in this. I've sold about $100 million worth of real estate in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
A lot of new homes. And what's nice about selling new homes in new communities is guess who's going to be that listing agent if you stay in touch 5, 7 years down the road, because most people don't live in a household in 7 years.
That's right. We have 6 that just listed, guys. 6 that just listed in the community that we built and I live in. Every one of them were the ones that helped them through the process. Because you kind of build a relationship longer with them. When it's a 30-day transaction, you show them a few houses, they write a contract, they're like, what was her name again? Or whatever. But it's like, you're there talking with them for a year. It sometimes like embeds that, you know, so you're right. It's a good point.
Did you say that this Mexico trip for, I know your salespeople, so are you talking about the buyer's agents?
Any agent, no, yeah, any outside agent, not the team, but like.
How many of you go to sell for them?
Well, it's a point. Actually, what's funny is they have a point. Like, for instance, Green Tech values like engagement as much as sales too. So like they give points for like when you show up to a party, you know, or you show up to like just do a tour, or even if you show our house, you're getting points. And whoever has the most engagement, it could even be someone could have sold 6 houses and someone sold 2, but they were like a freaking, you know, fan practically. They could be the one going. So it isn't a sales thing, even though the sales do give you like 1,500 points. So you do get like, you know, big points for sales. It's an engagement thing. And the reason why they do this is they know the more you're engaged, the more it's front of mind. And the more you're front of mind and, you know, and you build that relationship and it gets embedded, it's a relationship thing.
You said something about Lennar coming.
Yeah.
Can you speak any more details on that?
Except that I only know things like that because they have scouts going around trying to pluck our trades and, you know, walk through our models, and, you know, they're scouting right now. They have the land. They have 1,000 home community they beat out DR with, and now they're going to be building. That's going to be their flagship community here. If you don't know Lennar, they're kind of like DR Plus. They're like a one step up from DR. And I don't mean that sounds very negative. What I mean by that is they kind of have like programs where it's like everything's included programs, and they try to make upgrades a minimum, but they're a little higher price when I say up a bit, like price-wise. So, Lennar, Lennar. So,
And I'll just add, like, when you're talking about commissions and seeing the long term, in Florida, Lennar did not have that long-term vision with commissions. So I was just wondering, like,
yeah, I can't speak. I can't speak to the national builders. I only speak for like local collectives that I work with. But it really is, you know, we all saw in COVID when that happened and inventory went really hot, really low, builders started doing some like commission cuts. So, I mean, I've seen things like that happen. but not all builders. So you do have to kind of watch out for it when this time comes and just support the ones that support you. That's really what it's going to boil down to. But you find one that's got 15 communities and 1,500 lots available, that's a treasure trove if they support you. But
Other questions?
great questions. Yeah, there you go. They do should be sending it out quarterly, so you should have something coming soon. Well, thank you guys so much and I'll be hanging around, so if anyone wants to come and ask anything on anything, marketing or anything off topic. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.